Welcome everyone. My name is David Bowler. I'm the creator of GODZ. Today we're going to be doing a little Q&A, some of the most frequently asked questions that I feel are really important. Of course, there's some of the questions that always get asked, so I'm going to answer those first. And hopefully some of the people that ask those questions and for whatever reason I wasn't able to answer will hear this. However, some of those questions are pretty legit and actually it's been quite a while since we've been working on this project, and I think you have a right to know that. First question, when is it gonna come out? That's the question I pretty much get on a daily basis on one of these social media platforms from somebody. And of course, everybody wants everything yesterday, including myself. I'm Aries, I'm extremely impatient. I wish it would have been long done. But good things will just take a while. And considering the fact that, especially if you look at my very first video, that I'm pretty much doing this by myself, no surprise that it hasn't been done yet. So to answer your question, when, I hope soon. I can't give you a definitive date. I'm pretty sure we're going to have at least the start of it still this year. It's probably not going to be the summer. It's probably going to be in the fall, early winter. And then a couple episodes are going to maybe come early next year. I have to see exactly how that's going to work out, but considering the immense time investment that this is, and I have to make it somewhat of a business to make it worthwhile, I'm not surprised it took that long. And the good news is too, the longer it takes, the better it will get. That's definitely a fact, because if I look back at what I've been working on a year and a half ago even, then I have to say, okay, good, that year and a half was really well worth the wait, because the quality has gotten so much better. And if you really think about it, I'm doing this by myself. I'm basically doing the job of 15 people. Obviously I'm not doing everything as good as somebody would do it if they were a complete professional on each of those jobs. But I think all in all, it holds up pretty well. But there are certain things that I have to learn. I have to educate myself as I go along. So the more I do of that, basically, the better it gets. So I think if we get the trailer out by, I say, early summer, I think June would be realistic. And then we already have 2 minutes done. And then we're going to start working immediately after that. That will probably bring us into early fall. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty fair estimate. And it also depends, of course, I've talked about this in my last update, and I'm going to make a special video about distribution, where exactly I'm going to place that. So that brings me to my next question. Of course, the next question is, where can I see this? And that's always a problem. I mean, what if you have Amazon Prime and you have Hulu and you have HBO, but you don't have Netflix, and the show only plays on Netflix? Well, then you can't see it. So I kind of want to avoid that. I mean, I really want everybody to be able to see it one way or another. And Netflix deal doesn't seem to be forthcoming. I think the longer, the less this is going to be a reality. Never say never. You just don't know. But Netflix seems to be buying mostly projects of like really like known properties, like Masters of the Universe, Transformers, like the old and tried and true projects that everybody knows, which is not exactly what I'm doing here. This is pretty much like a fish out of water situation for Netflix, where we're going really out there, and in terms of the characters, in terms of the storylines. I mean, this is something that nobody's really like experienced like this. So I don't expect anybody to really believe that this is going to be a hit, other than myself and of course you, dear followers. And so I definitely want to keep my options open. I think there's going to be some platforms where I'm pretty much can guarantee at this point it's pretty much going to be on Amazon Prime. I can guarantee you that, in pretty much most of the countries. And I'm going to go with some distributor for that. So basically how Amazon Prime works is that if you're just a filmmaker and you just want to upload it, it's called Amazon Direct, but you can basically set it for if you want it on Prime, or if you want to have it for pay-per-view. But that only gives you like the American English speaking territories of the Americas and the UK. but you're not going to be in Germany, you're not going to be in Japan, you're not going to be like in South America and so on. So if you want to go through a distributor, then you have all the territories available to you. So I'm definitely going to do that. Although, I'm going to talk about the pay situation with Amazon Prime in another video, but the pay has been lowered, believe it or not, from 6 cents per streaming hours to 2 cents per streaming hour as of January 2020. And quite frankly, if things keep going the way they are, I wouldn't be surprised if by January 2021 it would be a half a cent per streaming hour. So Amazon just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing the little guys down. I'm sure they got better deals with the larger studios, but I just want people also to see it. I mean, yes, I need to make some money of it basically, otherwise I can't keep going, but I also want people to see it. Another option that I'm definitely going to pursue. It's called a Vimeo Pro. Basically, that solution allows you to embed a player with the videos on your website. So you can go to the Sky Gods website when it's live. You can click on watch video and you can watch it basically on the website. There will be a player embedded on there. Yes, you're going to have to sign up for Vimeo and there's going to be a fee for that basically, but it's marginal. It's not going to be a lot. And you definitely can see that I'm going to make it all territories open. So pretty much wherever you are in the world and you want to see it, you will be able to see it from the website. Then, of course, there are other streaming services, planning at this point to use Film Hub for distribution, and they have contacts with Gaia. I've talked about in a previous video that I was shut down by Gaia, by Jay Widener pretty harshly in the beginning. But that has something to do that I think Jay Widener is just an old man and he just doesn't understand what this is all about. And he actually was already on his way out, or he was already out of Gaia at the point. So I don't think he was in a position to make any decisions. But I think Gaia would be a good platform for Sky Gods. They don't have anything like that, and that's sort of like the target audience that would be interested in this project. There's also a couple Asian platforms. There's a couple Chinese platforms I'm looking at. So, I would say at this point, definitely on the Sky Gods website, definitely Amazon, and then the rest we'll have to see. Next question. So we're moving on to the alien questions. That's the one that perpetually keeps coming up, and this is not an easy one to answer. Have you seen the aliens that you are drawing? Now, of course, anybody who's doing artwork, and especially on a professional level, knows that if you can't see it, you can't draw it. So yes, the answer is, yeah, I've seen him. I've seen him in my head. Of course, that wouldn't satisfy most people, because I suppose what the people, and several people have asked this over last year, what they basically mean is, have I encountered the aliens that I'm drawing? Have I had physical interactions with the aliens that I'm drawing? Is there more of a reality to this than just my imagination? And I cannot definitively answer that, because it's very possible that I may have had some experience. I definitely did have some experiences in my environment for a long time, basically. And so many experiences I actually have trace element proofs. I have photos of things. I have neighbors to corroborate things. There is proof, but can I say with absolute certainty that I've seen or touched something? No, I can't. And I don't think any experiencer really can. But I don't think that's the point. I think everything is an experience, and I think you just being an experiencer, I think that's enough. And I can even say that just seeing the aliens in my head, for all you want, if you want, that's what you want to call it, it's still imagination. Then it still exists, doesn't it? Just because we can't see it, we can't really touch it, basically doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It exists in some form. And because I can draw it, I must have seen it. So the answer is yes. That's the beauty of doing comics, animation, whatever it is. You're basically making something out of nothing. The artist always, I think Goethe was even back at the time, he was basically saying that the artist is essentially the more sensitive one than the average citizen. He can see and feel things basically that other people cannot perceive. And the artist, if it's writing, film, or comics, or animation, or whatever it is, he can basically put it into physical in a physical form that everybody can appreciate. And in that sense, I think, yes, obviously I have some kind of a gift to see certain things and actually make it happen and make it be something that people connect with. And that does not mean that anything is real or not real. As actually, I did make a video a little while ago about believing and reality and all those kind of things. And I'm really sort of like really torn on this. I don't understand why people have to be so connected to sort of like having something to be true and having something to be real. I really don't find that terribly important. What's really important to me is, and I've said that before too, is to tell good stories, to do nice artwork that people connect with. That's why I'm much more inspired by mythology, I mean, and it's also the reason why I sort of left the Bible like off the table, because from the moment now you bring the Bible into the game, people will think, oh, this is not how it is, it has to be like this, and this really happened. It's totally irrelevant. What's really irrelevant, are you telling a good story? Is there symbolic quality to your story? And are you making people happy? So that's about that question. Then another question that is also quite often asked is Ashtar real? Now, a lot of people don't really know where the Ashtar myth really comes from. It actually comes from a 1950s contactee called George Van Tassel. He had an encounter with Ashtar, and he sort of wrote a first account of Ashtar. His son is actually trying to still pimp that idea, and he I think he has a documentary, or he's working on a documentary. I think I listened to a podcast about it. But the Ashtar that George Van Tassel created is a far cry away, basically, from the Ashtar that most people think of, which is the Ashtar created in the 1980s. Which basically was channeled material. It pretty much became a lot of love and light, and sort of like the look of like the blonde-haired, blue costumed Ashtar commander, and so on. That pretty much came out of the 80s New Age movement, and that's pretty much what most people think of it. Of course, if you ask, is Ashtar real? You're asking, is channeling real? And that's another whole can of worms, basically, because you ask 10 people, you get 10 opinions. Do I believe? Actually, I should rephrase that. I was going to say, like, do I believe this channeling is real? I should basically the question again. I was talking about this in a previous video. What is reality, and how do you define real? Is there an experience to channeling? Yes, sure there is. I don't think anybody can doubt that. But what does it really mean in a larger scope? Can you like be a prophet and foresee the future with channeling? I don't think really too many people have accurately done that. There's some people that claim to do it. And actually, I did subscribe for a while for a magazine called Sedona Magazine. It's a long time ago. We're talking here about like 20 plus years ago. Sedona Magazine that was basically full of channeled material. It was interesting to read, but almost nothing they talked about ever became true, in reality. You can say a lot of things, basically, and especially then there's the people like JC Knight. Is probably one of the most famous, most popular channelers pretty much of all time, I would say. Of course, next to Edgar Cayce. I think Edgar Cayce's got a little bit better track record. And some of the stuff that he said, at least from in terms of symbolic content and storylines and mythology behind it, was a little bit more interesting than what JC Knight was doing. I mean, JC Knight is just really, she's an insufferable character. Let's look at it that way, basically. But she pretty much is one of the most popular channelers, and she's really full of crap, basically. I mean, there is no other way to say this. This is essentially just like one big money-making enterprise, and that's all it is. And I think between Edgar Cayce and JC Knight, on the other hand, there's probably a good mid-section that has some validity. But do I believe it is real in a 3D sense, if that's what you want to call it? No, it's probably not. But what does that really mean in a 3D sense? We already know that a lot of things that we perceive to be real, like my uncle-in-law will always basically say like, "Oh, I believe it when I can see it." Not a very clever statement, considering like how much your eyes can actually see, which is not very much. Your eyes can see a tiny, tiny, tiny spectrum of what we know the frequencies are. Like, a lot of animals see a lot more, basically. That's why, for example, have dogs or cats, they will look up in the air in your room and they'll see stuff and there's nothing there. So, your eyes are not necessarily the best indicator, basically, of what there is. However, having said that, we do live in a 3D reality, basically being caught in our bodies. We can't really escape that too well. So when somebody asks, is Ashtar real? I sort of like perceived it as a question as like, is Ashtar a being out of flesh and blood, or maybe a higher density being that can be experienced? Then I would have to say probably not. I mean, can it be experienced? Yeah, probably could be experienced in your dreams or in some sort of a trance state or in outer body experience. And what other state that there is other than you just basically being awake in your 3D body. But it's like those questions that I don't, I said that in my update video, and I said this in previous videos, I don't really get caught up in those kind of discussions of what is real and what is not real. I don't find it too terribly interesting. What I find interesting is the good story? Am I entertained? Is it giving me a symbolic value? Do I learn something from it? Because I don't have the facilities to make a determination if something is true or not, if something is real or not. If I would tell you that this is true and this is real, I would be lying to you. And I think anybody that tells you that, and let's be honest, a lot of religions, organizations, cults, even UFO cults, I mean, I don't want to name any names here, but we all know who we're talking about here, are telling you this is what is real, this is what is true, everybody else is lying to you, when in fact they are lying to you. And usually it's always for monetary gains or power gains or some of those things. So basically, I don't think you should be too concerned about what is real and what is true, and just really basically, have fun with the stories, have fun with the symbolic quality that a story has, and get that out, don't get too obsessed with details. One of the questions that also comes up quite frequently is, how come the Anunnaki in your stories don't have long beards, like we see on the tablets or we see like in pictures on the internet? And of course my answer is very simple, because it's not very attractive. There was actually a guy about 10 years ago, a writer, who had initiated a graphic novel animation project about the Anunnaki, and he had instructed the artist to pretty much copy whatever was in the Sitchin books and whatever was on the internet, and it didn't look too good. It's just a bunch of guys with beards and big hats, walking around and talking to each other. Just wasn't really that attractive. So my idea really is essentially to bring this whole mythology basically to a pop culture audience. People that like watching anime, people like watching like playing games, all those kind of things. So they're used to that kind of aesthetic. I'm very much influenced basically by early 90s Studio Madhouse animation style. It's like the Vampire Hunter D is a very detailed, very realistic kind of style. So I really wanted to kind of like bring that kind of aesthetic to this GODZ universe. I'm not saying everybody needs to look attractive. Obviously, we're going to have some characters that are going to be a little more, what should I say? Like a little bit more manly looking, a little buffer looking, maybe a little more rugged looking. Like for example, Samana, who's one of the bad guys, or even Enlil. He's a quite massive brute. And so I'm thinking that most of the characters should look somewhat in that anime aesthetic, something that people really can get into, so they don't realize basically the subversive storyline. They don't really realize like what they're watching is very different than what they're used to be watching. but because the visuals are so compelling, the visuals really drag them in. I think that's like the best way to go. So that's my answer. No beards, because quite frankly, it's not particularly attractive. So please join my Patreon and get access to all the cool sketches and graphic novels and previews and storyboards and eventually animations coming up very soon. Also, you can follow me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter, basically. So we have pretty much daily updates on there. So if you want to keep abreast of everything that's going on, I would love to have you. Also, please subscribe and click the button or the bell for notification.